Welcome back to the podcast. Gabe Yanez and I, we are on for a weekly episode where we talk all things fitness, family, a little bit of business. Gabe, I know you're really cold. Well, you're kind of cold right now, but you've been filming some stuff for an upcoming project we have going on at Train Hard, which I'm really excited about. But I got to ask you a question. Do you like egg rolls?
Man, I can't tell you the last time I've had an egg roll. Yeah. I mean, I think so. My distant memory, but I can't remember the last time I've had one.
We have a place locally here in San Jose that's called King Egg Roll. This place has been around forever. And I grew up in an area that had like a very multicultural. And dude, this King Egg Roll, bro. I'm telling you, Ashley brought me home some yesterday. And like, I've been really trying to like be Train Hard 5. I've been eating pretty clean, having my 3 full meals. But I had a nice full meal of meat and like whatever. Everything was good. And then she brings some of the egg rolls. I'm like, well, Gabe wouldn't mind. Like I could just add this on to my Train Hard. Mind. I got in my 50
I love that I live rent-free in your head when you're making nutrition choices.
Dude, what would Gabe say? We should get a shirt that says, what would Gabe say? But dude, tell me about these nutrition videos because I'm curious. You know, when this podcast released in a very near future, we have some exciting projects going on at Train Hard that I really think are going to make a big impact on a lot of people. And you were filming some videos. I've been filming movement library videos, but you were filming in particular nutrition videos. You said you've never been so cold in your life. And I find that really hard to believe because, dude, you're also the guy that for an entire month, more or less, as soon as you woke up in the morning, you went and jumped in the cold plunge with no exceptions. Like you literally got up and went into the cold plunge, which I thought was one of the most fascinating feats you've ever accomplished. And now you're saying this is the coldest you've ever been. It makes me think that like, bro, are you getting soft over there? What's going on here? What happened?
Dude, it was a different level of cold. It's just, I mentioned this again. I feel silly talking about it over and over, but the office that I work in is this like little shed that just has no insulation and just, it gets really cold. And like right now I'm wearing gloves. I have a space heater next to me that you can't hear, but we were filming these nutrition videos. And so I had the lapel mic and it was picking up the space heater. And also like the space heater was like it didn't look good, obviously filming with a space heater in frame. So I had to get rid of that. I wasn't wearing gloves. I was just, trying to look normal. My nose was probably red because it was cold. But Ariel was here and she was helping me film a couple videos. And from like beginning to end, we did most of them in one take, but it was a good like 35, 40 minutes that we were in here filming these videos. And it was pretty cold. But no, I mean, all that aside, funny side note, but super excited, man. I mean, everyone that's on the app should remember, I think we actually sent this to everyone on the Train Hard app, but we've surveyed everyone. We've done a lot of work beginning of this year, like collecting feedback with people that are on our training programs, have had our training programs before. And, I think we've done, biased take, a really, really incredible job creating something for, men that want to train, protect, provide. I think that the feedback we've gotten on the podcast, on the newsletter, on our training programs, me specifically, people that are following Flex has been incredible. Now that we have TH5, people that are doing that, I love getting all the messages, but we can do more. And that's what, this announcement that, we're not quite ready to announce yet in April is going to be. And there's been a lot of work putting into this. And it's essentially taking everything that we've heard from people, all of the things that they thought we didn't have yet, community, really easy, movement library videos, more nutrition content, everything that people need that we didn't do the first time around is going to be in this second version. So I'm super excited, man. I'm pumped. And also just being able to dive deeper into nutrition. I mean, and anyone that listens to this podcast knows I'm just so passionate about this stuff. Like filming those videos, aside from being super cold, like I can just go on and on. And I kept them short, like they're not super long, but like really being able to hopefully dispel some of the noise and myths and like conflicting information around there so that hopefully people can watch these videos and just be like, that makes sense. And I know 3 or 4 very simple things that I can do and immediately have, a better relationship with nutrition, with the food choices I make and see progress. Like that's my goal with what I filmed. And I'm excited for that stuff to get out.
Yeah. It's really interesting because so we started Train Hard as an evolution. So NC Fit, I started in 2008, learned a lot, opened a bunch of locations, hired a bunch of people, it just learned a lot. And then in 2020, what was it, 2024 then, Gabe? Like January 2024, we launched Train Hard, the app. A couple months before that, we actually had a newsletter and some other stuff going on, but we launched the app in 2024. And then since then, over the last year, we've gathered a lot of information. And I'd say in the beginning of 2025, we said, hey, we want to survey our members better. We want to better understand how do we serve them for two reasons. One is we want to make an impact. Like that's what we're here for. We're not here just to make money. We're here to make an impact. Number two, the more of an impact we make, the more money you make. Like it's just, they go hand in hand. The more people we can impact, the better impact we can have, the better off it is for everybody. And so when we surveyed the members, one of the things we realized was that nutrition was a sticky point. Community was a necessity. Ease of getting onto a product and having easy access to understanding what the movement is for that day. This morning, actually, I did pen lay rows. And, a really good example is that in the app now, when you go in and you see pen lay rows come up, boom, there's a quick video and you don't have to search it or any of that kind of stuff. Those are little friction points that we saw in our community that we wanted to solve. And starting in April, we're going to solve those in my opinion, a really big way. So please stay tuned for that. I think the community function is probably what I'm most excited about, is ways to take what we're doing here at the Train Hard Men's Club and almost take that virtually. And we're still, identifying the best way to deliver that. But I think that that's my intention, is how do you take the connection community that we foster internally, in person, and do the best we can doing that virtually. It's obviously not going to be perfect, but it's going to be good.
Yeah, I think it's making available and opening the doors for more two-way conversations. I get back to every single, and I know you do too, but I've been starting to get more and more replies. So the Wednesday newsletter comes from you. The Thursday, which was originally just kind of like plugging our podcast, but now I always try and put some nutrition content in there, something useful, some of my thoughts, what I'm thinking about, that comes from me. And I've been getting more and more replies. I know this past week we sent something about alcohol, got some really cool replies there. So I answer all of those emails. I also have a lot of people reach out to me on Instagram, talk to me about podcasts they listen to, how Flex is going, TH5, all of that stuff. I get back to everyone there. But we want to make that more accessible and easier to like, dude, let's connect. Like, I want to answer questions. I want to hear how Flex is going. I want to hear, how you're training for a Hyrox race and, how your running is going and how can I help with that? I want to hear, what might be a struggle on the nutrition side? Like, what's something that's being difficult for, a habit for you to adapt, and let's brainstorm some ideas to get better. And also like having a more two-way conversation for some of the things that we talk about here on the podcast, some of the like bigger mindset things. And, I know we talked about last time we recorded about this manifesto or code that, we're going to put out. Like, let's talk about those ideas in a meaningful way. And yes, us give our opinions and our advice and how we apply it to our lives. But I also want to hear, how are you guys applying it to your lives? What struggles are you going through? What is working? What is not? And let's just come up with solutions together, because I know that I can learn a lot. Same way I've learned a lot from you and all the guests and the home team episodes, by being a co-host of the podcast. I know a lot of people have learned by listening, but I know that we can all grow a lot more if we're all kind of like listening and sharing to each other. So that's the goal, man. And I'm super fired up. It's April. For a long time seemed like it was really far away, but like many things, it's now around the corner. So it's going to be exciting to start talking about it more, to start, getting some details out there. Hopefully people are getting excited. The reason we don't want to completely let the cat out of the bag is just because we want to know exactly how we want to present this stuff, but just know that we're super excited, and it's going to be a really, really cool evolution of what Train Hard has been. And again, like I said, last time we recorded, feels like forever, but it's really only been, a year and a couple months now.
Yeah. I was in the, one more note on this and then we can kind of move on. I think that I was actually talking to a friend of mine this morning. His name's Justin. And I was sharing with him how you and I have these conversations and how sometimes I have to be aware that like everybody I surround myself with represents like, dude, I mean, I surround myself with people who are constantly getting after it. And we were talking about, he's a coach of one of his son's baseball team. And we were just having a conversation about how not everyone is in alignment with they don't have the same type of connection. They're not getting after it. They're not doing the things they know they need to do, but they want to, right? And we were talking about this idea of push and pull and whatnot. But anyways, the reason why I bring that up is that, for him in particular, too, he's been doing your flex. He was talking about like 25 reps. So I don't know if you had a cycle. I don't know. When was that? When was that cycle?
I believe that those are the trisets in phase 2. So right. I think that that's what's going to come in this April version of the programming and app. But yeah, 6, 12, 25, man, it's a mean structure. It's fantastic. It's so good.
Dude, it's so funny because we were talking about dumbbell bench and at a conventional gym, and like you start off and you're hitting this rep scheme and then boom, 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 boom. Now he's, hitting the 120s, and I'm like, fuck. I was like, dude, but it's because of your rep scheme. So anyways, what is the rep scheme? 6, 12,
it's definitely
20?
Not mine. Charles Poliquin, the late and great, is the one that popularized this type of tricep, and it's 6, 12, 25, all targeting the same exact muscle group. So as an example, you would do 6 reps on the barbell incline bench. You would do then 10 seconds rest, 10, 15 seconds. Like you're going right to the next movement. Then you do 12 reps potentially on like the incline dumbbell bench. And then you go right into 25 reps of like, cable or dumbbell chest flies. And the idea is that back to back to back, you're hitting a movement and a rep scheme that is going to target strength and mechanical tension. That's the 6. You're going to target a movement and rep scheme that's going to do muscle damage for hypertrophy. That's the 12. And then you're going to hit a movement and rep scheme that's going to target just muscle endurance and burnout. And that's the 25. And it is a fantastic way to also just be very time efficient, because you need 2 or 3 sets of that. And like you could skip the rest of the session and you've made fantastic gains. Obviously there's more programmed into it because that'll take a little bit of time, but that's one of the examples of like, if you're following Flex, and I try and vocalize this as much as I can, the full programming is meant like can totally be done in like 45, 50 minutes, especially if you're doing the low end of the rep schemes. But it's usually like 60 minutes. And if you're not like super on top of it, if you're like, a little bit like, you do a warm up set before doing every new superset, it can easily be a 70, 75 minute program. That's probably what it is realistically if you're not like super on top of it, which I completely get. But having said all that, like if you on any given day are like, shit, like I thought I was going to have an hour today, but I literally have 30, 35 minutes. You can go and do something like that. Like you can do the strength portion or the first portion of it. And it's not like you're not getting the full stimulus. Like you do 2, 3 sets of a 6, 12, 25 type of structure targeting chest. Like you check the box off for chest that day. You got an incredible stimulus that will absolutely help towards muscle building and whatever it is you're working towards. So that's what I love about stuff like that. And why you'll always see it come up first in the programming, because I also write it in a way, because this happens to me all the time. I would say that 60% of the time I can do most of the sessions, but honestly, like 40% of the time I'm doing like half of what's out there, just because I didn't have as much time as I wanted to, or whatever. Sometimes it's honestly because I dilly-dally, but I know that I can do that much and it's still a win, 100% still a win. So anyway, shout out Justin.
We were doing a Pendlay rows, prone dumbbell rows, which I actually really liked today. So you lay on the bench and you basically, dude, those were good, man. Those felt great. And then, I'm a sucker for a barbell curl, man. I don't know why, but like even just a 45-pound bar, when you keep your elbows tucked in and you're curling it, it just makes me feel like I'm getting stronger. I don't know. I love the barbell curl, but we were doing that this morning. But it's a really good example where if you live in the middle of nowhere, or if take for example where Gabe lives, he does not have access to as many people like right around him like I do. I have a bunch of people that live right next to me. But the question then works, how else are you going to meet people? And you meet people through your kid's school, you meet people through jiu-jitsu, you meet people through CrossFit. But if you're not doing those things and you're just going to work and coming home, dude, we need to start finding a way to create conversations. And that's one of the biggest goals of Train Hard. And it's going to be hard. Like I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to act like this is going to happen overnight. But what my intention is that over time, you create this group through online. And then maybe you create like breakout groups or something. I don't know. We got to figure out, how do you take a digital presence of men who all have a shared alignment in a core values and standards they want to set, and then foster more connection between them. And that's what we're going to do. It's happening.
For sure. And also I think the accountability and even just connection without necessarily having to quote unquote connect with anyone, of just seeing a bunch of people that are clearly under the same circumstances as you are putting in the work. Because another thing that I'm really hoping for this next evolution and what this is going to look like is, I want to see people share progress pictures every single week, and just like you have access to that all the time as a way of just like, dude, I remember that guy 2 months ago and he looks like a different person. And when you see that 100 times over, I would hope that a bunch of people would be like, I want to be like that, and I'm going to do the same thing.
Yeah, we should find ways to celebrate that, right? Pull that guy up on the screen. Like, that's what it's about.
Pulling it up on the screen or having it in the app, in the community. Like, these are all things that we're trying to figure out. But I think that that's another incredibly powerful thing, because to your point, if you were a part of a gym, or if you were lucky enough to be in the Bay Area and do the Train Hard Men's Club, like, there's an impact to, if you've been going, say you've been going for 12 weeks straight, and you go and you do the workout on Saturdays with Jason, but like, that's pretty much all you do. You're not too focused on your nutrition. Like, you're not working out during the week, but you're going, and it's a great first step. And this other guy that has been there since you started going, like, you see him and now he's taking his shirt off for the picture at the end of the workout. He looks like a different man. His energy levels are better. When you go to coffee afterwards, like, he's talking about how good he feels and all those things. I would imagine that what that's going to do to that person, he's going to be like, shit, like, what are you doing? And he's going to say, hey man, like, I'm doing TH5, like, I cut out alcohol. I'm having 3, meals every day. I'm following the app during the week. And then they're going to do that. And it's all this like contagious momentum that I know happens just when you see other people putting in the work and being incredibly successful. And I think that that's another thing that we can create digitally, because you're going to see all these guys that are doing it and are seeing the results. And I think that that's a huge missing part, because we sent this out in the newsletter a couple weeks back. A big issue is just like, I completely get that a lot of guys just don't think that it can happen to them, right? Like, for whatever reason, they're like, like, I've tried I've tried a diet before. I've tried working out before and just hasn't worked out for me. I've either gotten injured or burnt out or haven't seen the results that I wanted to get. So seeing all these men that are in their same circumstances, like, also have a job, also have the kids, are also busy, are also time strapped, be able to do it, I think is just going to give you, I mean, in many ways, the earned confidence that like, well, I can do it too, because they're no different than me and they did it. So I'm going to do it too. And I think that that's another incredibly powerful thing that I know you've created with the men's club that meets in person, but I think we can do that and have that impact with a lot more men just overall.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking at it. I have 240 people on my weekly email list for the men's club. And not everybody comes obviously every week, right? But those are people that are in the Bay Area alone who are engaged and want to be a part of that. And it's like, man, how do we take that and give somebody like this weekly outlet? And maybe it'll be every Monday at, 8 a.m. Pacific time as an example. And we're going to host, a 30-minute meeting where we're just going to level up and be like, dude, this is what we got going on this week. And we're going to let's go run through a brick wall. And that for a lot of people is all they need. I mean, I know for me, we have podcast guests on in general, like once a week, Gabe, like give or take, so Gabe and I'll we'll record with the home team, but then we record with a guest once a week. And dude, I know that once a week episode makes a big impact on me. And like, that's kind of what this like weekly event is for the men that we're trying to design. It's like just a weekly reminder of like, hey, these are things we got to work on this week. Let's go get it. And just to fire people up. Like this week, actually, I'm going to muster for Echelon Front. And I'm very excited about that. They're going to have 850 people. They're expecting 70% to participate in a parking lot of a workout. And I'm going to be helping to run that with the guys from Echelon Front. And I can't wait to provide feedback on how that experience is, because based on what you were saying, like there's something about like that pure energy, right? And then how do you do that digitally? Where like a lot of these guys, they don't work out regularly, but now you're just in that environment and you just start getting inspired. You start seeing other people doing it. And that's what we're going to do through the calls we have coming up.
Dude, just on a separate note though, do you think that people attending the muster don't work out regularly? I would assume that they don't.
According to the people I just spoke to, they said that on average, every single time they have people throw up, every single time they have people sit out, and they've had the ambulance come twice. And I think what happens is these people, because a lot of people are coming for the extreme ownership side, like they're coming for,
right.
They're coming for like the business education. And I think that they're just like, well, I'm paying all this money. I should like also do the fitness portion. They're inspired. And then they come and they just, get over their skis a little bit. So I think that, my role probably, I'm probably more on like the softer side, I'd say, and trying to like back people off, because some of these people, you want them to come back the next day, right? And you want them to be like, I think something I've learned through CrossFit is like the old me was just dosing people too hard. And you actually did them a disservice, because it felt so far away that they never wanted to come back. And I think if we had just made it a little bit more inviting, we could have even gotten more people in. So that's something that's on my mind with like this group, is like, what role can I play? And all my role is, by the way, at the Muster, just full transparency, I'm literally just in like a support role. So JP and the rest of the team are running it. I'm just there to observe and support. And then maybe in the future, I'll play a bigger role. But for now, I just want to see how they're doing it and provide feedback on anything that I see. That's it.
Yeah, it's such an important point. It's such a disservice to like give people too big of a dose that first time, right? Like Train Hard is literally the brand that we started and that, is on my sweater right now, but that's always going to be relative to where you are. And I think that that's another one of the like big resistance points for people, is because they will see, me posting my workout, you posting your workout, and, they want to get there, but it's sometimes difficult to understand that I've always been trained. Like I haven't gone more than 2 weeks without significantly training. I know you haven't gone, 3 days without significantly training.
I haven't gone 3 hours. Yeah, I'm just
our appropriate dose is going to be very different. And that doesn't like mean anything. Like that doesn't put us at any like different levels. It just means that like you have to go in and do what's appropriately hard for you to support the other areas in your life. Like if you're too sore to do stuff afterwards, like that would be a disservice to me and my family. Same thing for anyone else. And I think that that's an incredibly important point, especially if you're, in the position where you're actually leading people in a workout or, prescribing a workout or coaching or anything like that. Super important. Well, sometimes it can feel, I was just going to say, sometimes it can feel like a good workout if you leave them super sore or whatever, but it's not.
No. And that's how I've evolved. I mean, the idea is we're trying to manufacture suffering here, right? We've talked about that a little bit on the podcast lately. And manufactured suffering is so important because it helps you to overcome adversity, do hard things. But that's all like relative, dude. I mean, like manufactured suffering for someone who's new to jiu-jitsu or new to fitness is much different than manufactured suffering for someone who's been exposed to it for a really long period of time. You don't need much to manufacture that suffering for someone who hasn't gotten off the couch in 5 years and comes to their first, men's club. And I think about that a lot, dude. When new guys show up at the men's club, the first thing I do, man, like when we gather everybody, what's up, everybody? My name's Jason, like fired up for you to be here. Like, dude, it's 6 o'clock in the morning and you could be, sleeping with a donut in your mouth or whatever, but you're here, like appreciate you. Who's new? And I know who's new because I go around, I introduce myself to everybody. But the first thing I'm doing is I'm looking at that guy. I'm just saying to myself, hey man, like, what can I do to make his experience as optimal as possible? And chances are I need to try and tell him just to chill because he's going to pick up on the energy. He's going to want to go too hard and then he's going to get so sore. He's not going to be able to sit on the toilet and he's not going to want to come back. So that's something but like the old me would be like, hey, how do I dose this guy so hard that he throws up in the parking lot and then he never forgets his first experience, It's just different.
And it's also like different personality types is just another, well, I don't even know if this is a personality type, but I vividly remember my first CrossFit experience when I did the free trial class. I'm never going to forget. It was 7-minute AMRAP of 7 burpees and 7 wall balls. And I came in as someone that was fit, like collegiate swimmer. I was doing triathlons at the time, but I'd never done that type of stuff. And I remember free trial class, there was one other guy there that was like athletic and we immediately got competitive and went after it. And I could not, to your point, I couldn't get off the toilet the next day. My legs were sore, like sore to the bone. Like one of those sores where like it feels
for a new person because of the wall balls.
Oh, dude, 100%, 100%. Yeah. But I feel like that was rampant back then. Like the overdosing, like free trial class was like, we're trying to bury people. But like CrossFit was taking off at that time because there were a lot of people like me that, I woke up the next day like that and there was no part of me that was like, I never want to do that again. It was the opposite. For me, it was like, that messed me up. Like I need to do that again. I need to go back. I need to sign up. Like, take my money. I'm in. So that's like kind of an important thing to consider as well. But I think that the big takeaway there is that that's few and far between, especially now. I feel like a lot of people that fall into that bucket have been in fitness all of their lives for some reason, especially at this point with CrossFit being so prevalent. I think that for people that this is new, they're not going to be that type of person. They're going to be the person that I think has had more negative than positive experiences with fitness, and they need a win. And that's kind of what your goal is. Your goal is to give them a win, make them feel like they did something hard, but also make them feel the next day like, hey, I can do this. Like I might be a little sore. I might feel like I did something, obviously, but I can do this. And therefore they go back, build a little momentum, and they're off to the races.
Hey, I want to ask you, so I was talking to our boy Trevor. Remember him? Remember the Spartan?
Of course.
Dude, so I was talking about BPC 157, and so
let's go.
Dude, so
love me a little peptide talk.
Dude, so he goes, hey man, I know what you need. And so he because I text him. I text him because I'm like, because blokes can't get injections. They can only get pills right now for BPC 157. And I was asking because I guess they're not FDA approved or something like that. And so I guess the BPC 157 ingested is really helpful for like GI tract and stuff like that, but it's not as useful for like knee problems like what I'm trying to solve. So he says to me, BPC 157, 5 milligrams per week. Okay, I don't, this GHK-CU, 5 milligrams per day. Thymosin beta 4, 5 milligrams every 5 days. Run all of that for 5 weeks. Load the tissue moderately and see how you do. I'm going to call him later, but I just wanted to share, like, dude, the amount of knowledge, like amount of people that are like deep in the peptide space now. I'm so fascinated by it because I feel good, but I think I could feel better, and I think my knee could feel better. And I'm going to continue to explore a few of these things, and then I want to share them on this show. Like, I don't want to just talk about things without testing them out myself and looking at all the research. So I'm doing a deep dive right now between Thomas DeLauer, Trevor, and others, trying to figure out like what cocktail will help my knee and tissue to make me feel like I'm 21 again. I'm not trying to get on testosterone or anything, because I feel good there.
Dude, I'm like 5 steps ahead of you, man. I've gone so deep into the peptide rabbit hole, so deep.
Have you heard of GHK-CU? I've never heard of that one.
I haven't heard of that one specifically. There's so many, dude. There's so many. But like the big one. So BPC 157.
We still need JP on the show. Remember when he pulled out his bag?
Dude, we did. Yeah. The problem with BPC 157, because it's not FDA approved and because the injectable version is apparently like, you know, the what you want for the injury recovery and prevention, is that, and this stuff does make me nervous, but you have to go with these brands that are selling it, quote unquote, not for human consumption. And that means that
just
it's not
that alone. It just sounds shady, doesn't it?
For sure, man. It's how you get around this stuff. Like the analogy that I'm familiar with, you know, because of the homesteading kind of like farming world, is that's how a lot of people get around selling raw milk, for example. Again, something that is, you know, I mean, depends on where you fall on the spectrum, but obviously I think it's like completely innocuous, like very safe, very overregulated, but there's a lot of people that sell it. Texas is not as crazy, but I know in other states, they get around it by just saying, hey, this is pet food, or this is not for human consumption, but obviously everyone's buying it for human consumption. So that's how a lot of these peptide companies are getting around that. They're quote unquote for research purposes only. And it's funny because they have to sell it that way, you have to buy all the other stuff that you need to use it separately. They can't provide you the stuff because nothing on their website, nothing on where you order it from can make it seem like they're actually providing it for you to use it.
BPC 157, if you order it for non-human use, you have to order like the BPC 157 like canister and then separately get the needles.
You have to get the needles, the bacteriostatic water is the big one, because a lot of this, the bacteria, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it comes as a powder. So you need
BPC 157 comes as a powder?
Yes, for most people, because that's how it's most stable. And then you have to, I forget the word, but essentially mix it with water, but you can't just do it with any water. And bacteriostatic water is like the ideal for injecting because it's even more pure and has something that keeps it stable than distilled water. But you have to buy that. That's like something separate that you have to buy.
Okay.
Dude,
I didn't know that.
Rabbit holes. I've spent a lot of time in the peptide.
Because, but the
I'd
one
love
that
to
you're
talk to someone though, because it'd be good to have whether it's Trevor or Josh again or someone back on the podcast, because I think that now we would have so many more questions about this stuff, and maybe we can even get questions from listeners that are curious about this stuff, and we could do like a peptide episode.
Yeah, we should have Trevor on. We should do a peptide episode with like Thomas DeLauer or Trevor. I mean, Trevor, because of his medical background, I think he'd be fascinating on here. So, okay, we're going to do it because I didn't know that BPC 157 came as like a powder in some cases. And I also didn't know that it was regulated so much by the FDA that it isn't available through injectables. So I think what's really important about this podcast is like, dude, we talk about being a dad, we talk about fitness, we talk about a bunch of stuff. We also talk about stuff we're interested in, whether it's faith, whether it's peptides, and we will share everything along that journey. I'm going to be fully transparent. Currently, I take nothing of any kind. So if I start doing a peptide, you guys are going to know. And if I end up competing, the only thing I could think of is that there's a IBJJF Master Worlds Jiu-Jitsu tournament. I need to see if they drug test, and if they did, if I would get in trouble for doing BPC 157. I don't think I would, nor do I think I would care. I would just be like, look, dude, I'm using this to help my knee. It's not like this is like a testosterone thing. I don't know. I have to look into it. That's the only event that I'm currently thinking about doing that would drug test for that type of stuff.
You know what the interesting thing is, though, because I also looked into this, is there's really no way to test for them. There just isn't. Like, it's different
for those
if you're
peptides?
Yeah, specifically for like sermorelin, which is something that promotes growth hormone. So that's definitely banned and is seen as a performance enhancing substance. But the thing is that there's no like the half-life of this stuff is super short. Like it's like hours. Like in 2 days, there's no sign of it being in your system. That's kind of thing one. And so two, like there is no test for it. I think even to where they can test it, like if you were to have just taken it. So that was interesting for me because I think I mentioned this in another recording, dude. I think it's so much more widespread than anyone realizes. People just don't talk about it. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I think now it's in this weird space where I think it's like, it's not super mainstream yet, but if you're someone whose livelihood depends on you performing in a sport and you're trying to mitigate injury, improve recovery, I cannot imagine that you haven't looked into this stuff and haven't used it, especially if there's like no way for anyone to find out unless you're like openly talking about it. I just can't imagine that being the case.
Well, and is that even a bad thing, right? Like,
I don't. I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I think it should just be like these things should be allowed. It's tough because like then where do you draw the line, right?
Right.
I think that's
what's the difference between recovery and performance enhancing, right? Because one would say all of these are performance enhancers.
Sure,
you'd make that argument.
Creatine's performance enhancing.
Well, because otherwise you wouldn't be doing it, right? Like, so if you said to me, well, then why are you interested in BPC 157? I'd be like, well, dude, my knee hurts and I want to heal it faster. Well, then wait, you're telling me that's a performance enhancer? I'm like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's tricky, man. It's tricky because then, is taking testosterone performance enhancing, right? For someone that's competing.
Yeah.
That's something that, right. But so where do you draw the line? Because I feel like some people would argue, and I could see this argument, that like taking a peptide like BPC 157 that helps you recover from an injury and get back to training quicker, not performance enhancing. But taking testosterone, like now you're, adding an exogenous hormone that is putting you at, I don't know if superhuman would be, whatever, like elevated levels of this thing that dictates like strength and athleticism and recovery and all of these things. But like, I don't know. Where do you draw the line there? What would you allow or not allow if you were trying to, make this more widely accepted just so that people are able to take advantage of the thing that keeps them healthier, like avoids injury, all things that you want.
When is Hyrox going to start drug testing? Right?
They already do. They do.
They do?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, they do. For the top athletes, at least they do. But again, like you're drug testing for things that would show up in a drug test.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. It's a very interesting. So, okay. Take this as a note, as a listener of the podcast. We will get someone on to talk even more about peptides. We had Josh Whalen, who's the founder of Blokes. That was a great conversation. And we talked high level about a bunch of stuff. I'd like to nerd out even deeper on like this peptide thing on like a very specific podcast about that, not talking about anything else. Speaking of Blokes, if you're looking to get your blood work done and you like all these conversations about peptides and you haven't got your blood work done, check out the podcast show notes. It's $75. Use our code. There's no reason why you shouldn't have blood work done to see if any of these type of peptides or whatever are even good options for you, right? I mean, peptides not necessarily, but like the testosterone and different things, like you should be getting your blood work done. And if you're not, the only reason why you wouldn't is cost. And now it's only $75. So check out the podcast show notes because that's a great place to go.
I mean, peptides aside, cholesterol levels, A1C, fasting glucose, all incredibly important things that, again, like I can speak to this. I've been very diligent about diet, sleep, health, but high cholesterol runs in my family. And I had high enough that it was like something I had to do something about 2 blood tests ago and, made some changes. I tend to respond a certain way to saturated fat. I was doing like very kind of like carnivore meat heavy stuff in the past. I scaled back from that a little bit. And now I'm like well within a healthy range. I would never have known that. Never. If I hadn't gotten blood work done. And as someone that's, in their early 30s, like I don't want to be dealing with that now. Imagine what that looks like had I never done the due diligence to figure out what that number was once I'm like 45, 50. Like, dude, then you could be in a place where you're, in some hot water and have to make some really big changes or potentially have to get on a pharmaceutical. And I always wanted to avoid that. So testament to the fact that like, yes, seeing what you can optimize is important, but also just like, you never know, even if you're like someone that considers yourself very healthy, what might be going on just because of like genetics, family history, all that stuff. So figure it out. Best $75 you'll ever spend. But yeah.
Dude, so just before we kind of start closing these out, that 444 thing was interesting to me. Did you see that article I sent you? Okay.
I didn't watch it, but
let's lay a little bit of backstory. Gabe is in his gym. He generally wakes up earlier than me. He trains harder than me. He looks better than me. So Gabe's normally in his garage or outdoor training area early, right? So I guess the day before he had put up a story on Instagram at 4:44 in the morning doing whatever he was doing. The following day, I was actually coaching at one of our gyms and I was opening the gym at 5 a.m. So I got there pretty early and I didn't happen to put up a post or a story or whatever until 4:44 in the morning. And I happened to put the time, I don't know, just because I'm like, dude, we're here at 5 a.m. He's about to crush it, whatever. And so sure enough, you have Gabe that puts up 4:44. I put up 4:44. What's the chances? What's the likelihood, right? Like, that's pretty crazy. And so we got a message just kind of sharing that there's a biblical, or they say it's like a reference from angels, Gabe. Did you see what I wrote? I sent you?
Yeah, and we've actually had another reference to it on the podcast when, God, I'm blanking on his name. San Antonio, Mansfield. What's his first name?
Nathan,
yes. Nathan Mansfield on his episode, great episode. Because his whole talk about like, dude, when he was, he was like going to go contemplating suicide,
right?
Yeah. And he saw 444 a bunch of times, even to the point where like he parked the parking, parked the car to go do it. And it was parking lot, like the parking number was 444.
Yes.
Crazy. Yeah.
So in numerology, the number 444 is considered an angel number that can symbolize stability, clarity, and progress. It can be a sign that you're on the right path and that your efforts will be rewarded. And I just found that to be really interesting that, we were sent a message, just kind of like drawing attention to that because you shared it one day, I shared it the next day. I had no idea. And boom. So makes me feel like we're on the right path, man. Makes me feel like we're doing something that is going to impact a lot more people, and we're just getting started on it. So anyways, I thought I'd bring that up because I thought that was pretty wild. For sure.
It's funny, man, because I would say as little as like 2 years ago, I would have been the first one to like laugh something like that off and just be like, dude, it's a stupid coincidence. Like whatever. I've been like that all of my life. And, you know, Ariel, my wife, she's been very spiritual since I've known her, not necessarily religious, but like very woo woo, if you want to call it, right? Like
woo-woo,
the universe sends you signs and like nothing happens for by accident and stuff like that. And we've always kind of like, you know, I give her a hard time, but you know, I mean, large part through this podcast, you know, I've definitely changed my mind about some stuff, and either way, because I still think that sometimes I revert to some of this stuff and like, let me just look at this logically, like, you know, no belief aside. And to me, the way I look at it too is like, you can see something like this and you can choose to believe that it's just a coincidence, or you can choose to believe that it is this like positive sign. And I think that in and of itself is a powerful choice that you can make, where you have nothing to lose by believing that it's a positive sign and having it be this thing that like motivates you to keep doing what you're doing. And like, you know, I shared it with you right away and whatever. And people might think, you know, whatever they want to think about you believing that, but none of that should matter. I think it's like, it's all that we've talked about with faith, and that you have nothing to lose by leaning into this stuff, being open-minded to it, and like figuring out like where it'll take you. And I think it's just a little closed-minded to like continue to like ignore that messaging. So
for sure,
when I look at it like that, then it's just like it's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. That's it. Yeah. I mean, I think that we don't need validation. Like the way I feel is the way I feel. And like, I'm going to take it as a positive. I'm going to take it as we're on the path.
100%.
And that's it. You know, it's funny. I shared this clip, or we shared this clip on the Jason Khalipa podcast about me and Ashley, and how I said, I think people think it's a figure of speech when I say I train every day. And I was like, this is not a figure of speech. This is a fact. And Ashley's like, every day. Right. And someone messaged on there, like commented, and it really like, I was like, all right, I agree. He's like, what do you say? He's like, I train every day, but I don't need I shouldn't have to care if other people like think I do or don't. It's like, it doesn't matter. And I kind of took that to heart. Like, yeah, why do I feel like I need to prove, and this is totally different than what we were talking about on the faith thing, but like, that was an interesting post, an interesting comment back. I'll have to look up exactly what it was. But basically saying like, why do I feel like I needed to share in a podcast that when I say I train every day, it's not a figure of speech, it's literally every day. Like, why do I care if someone else thinks that it's a figure of speech? You know what I'm saying? So I was like reframing it in my mind. Like, I need to care less about what other people think and just care that I'm doing what I need to do. And the faith journey is the same thing. I'm going to keep doing what I want to do that feels right, that feels authentic. And I don't need other people's like external validation. But me saying even like, oh yeah, you know, I train every day. And then having my wife be like, every day, subconsciously, I think that's my way of like showing the community that like, I'm not lying. But it's like, at the end of the day, if they think I'm lying, they think I'm lying, you know?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's been another thing that is like, I feel fast forwarded with having kids. It's like how much I care about what other people think about literally anything.
Well, that's what Liz put up. So she said, the comment was, and Gabe, you could relate to this, I don't care what people think or how they interpret what I say. Training every day is something I do for my family. It's like, all right.
There you go.
You know what I mean? Like,
shout out that comment.
Dude, I'm like, when he wrote that, I was like, ooh, yeah, you're right. You're right. Like, you know, anyways. Well, dude, look, I appreciate everyone who listens to this podcast. You guys mean so much to Gabe, myself, our families, where we're going in the future. Like, we're not messing around. Like, we're here to make a big impact. And through our Train Hard code and what we're going to, you know, what we're sharing, you guys will see it. It's been brewing for a while. It's all going to come together very soon. And I'm confident that if you're like listening to this podcast, you're going to be like, all right, man, like I get what these guys are doing. I want to be a part of that. And whether that's through the community function, whether that's through the actual programs, but yeah, we're locked in. We're ready to rock. We're launching April 1st. Make sure you're on our newsletter. That's in the podcast show notes. And make sure you're going back and checking out all the other guest episodes like Chandler Smith. That recently came out. That was a great conversation. We have one in the books with Ann. That was just, dude, awesome. I actually saw Ann, that guy who like walks around and walks up to people that look rich and says, hey, what did you do for whatever?
Yeah.
She was on one of those recently.
Yeah. Liz sent you the clip. You didn't watch it when she sent it to you. Got red-handed.
Liz sent me the clip? That clip?
Yeah. Liz sent you that clip when we were preparing for the podcast. Jason doesn't read our messages. I know.
A friend of mine sent it and said, hey, was this the girl you were talking to? I said, yeah. And she's
so
awesome.
Classic.
What I really meant to say is, Liz, I saw what you sent me and I feel inspired right now. Oh, man.
Oh, so good. Good.
Well, Gabe, team, I hope you guys have a phenomenal rest of your day. And dude, stay tuned. Stay tuned for all things Train Hard. Be on the newsletter. Leave a rating or review on the podcast. Let's grow this thing to get it as big and as incredible as possible to make the biggest impact possible. I hope you and your family have a great day. Let's keep kicking ass.